Thank you for joining. This is going to be a session to debate the ethics of health gamification, to look at some of the areas of should we create addictive health games, or is that a bad thing? And are there certain frameworks we should be following to make sure there are good ethics within health gamification? I'm going to go around. Oliver, do you want to come and introduce yourself first?
Yeah, thank you. Oliver Korn from Offenburg University in Germany. So I've been a gamer for the longest part of my life. I think I got my ZX81 when I was 10 or 11 years old. And now I'm a professor for human-computer interaction, and I teach game design and game development. And I just started a course on gamification and serious games. I also I had a startup of Fraunhofer's where we developed probably one of the first serious games ever. It was called Learn to Work, and it was a company simulation much too early in the year 2007, where even the term gamification wasn't around. So I've always been sort of in the game. Right now we have founded a new institution in Germany to also evaluate serious games, to give them like a certificate. What is a good serious game actually constitute? And so serious games, gamification, that's always been sort of part of my research and also part of my private interests. And so I'm very lucky to be here. Problem may be that I'm rather pro gaming and pro gamification. So when it comes to complaining about the ethical side, maybe I'm not the best person to advocate sort of the devilish aspects of gamification, but maybe
maybe the answer
we'll find someone who can do that.
Maybe the answer just is we need to make them more addictive anyway, Oliver.
But that's the thing, yeah.
Thank you very much. Melis, do you want to come in and give yourself an intro, please?
Yeah, sure. Like so many incredible people on the panel. Love it. So my name is Melis. I'm currently located in Istanbul, Turkey. I'm the founder of Wellbees, and Wellbees is an employee wellbeing platform. We're currently serving 17 different countries in 9 different languages, and we're proud to be measuring our impacts day to day, and we're proud to say that we trigger personal and cultural behavior change in the companies that we work with. That's like why we exist. That's why we work every day. Advertisements aside. Oh, here's my little one. Sorry about that. Let her introduce herself too. Sorry about it. Maybe Ben, it's at this point it's better to jump to Victoria. And
that's absolutely fine. We'll do that. Victoria, you would have already introduced yourself briefly in the previous session. Do you want to give a quick recap?
Yes, so I'm bringing self-help and gamification together, and it's an approach to turn life into fun games, and just 3 approaches into one, like awareness, small bits, and gameful playfulness, and so on. And I'm interested about this researching our own brains and supporting ourselves into in living life to the full, and being aware of what power actually, how games can empower us. So, yes.
Fantastic. Right, in that case, I'm going to jump in and start with the first area of the topic, is the addictiveness of health games. So I want to pose a little idea, is that should we worry about creating addictive health games when there is such a huge challenge and need with fast food, sugar, smoking, alcohol pumping billions of dollars into advertising and consumer habit formation? Do we just need to make the most addictive health games possible? I know we're all kind of health gamifiers in here in some way, shape or form. We're not too biased about it. Oliver, I'm going to start with you. What do you think about that statement?
Well, I think I've been using a Fitbit ever since they came into the market. And when you were talking about gamifying your sleep and everything, I mean, first thing I do in the morning is check how was my REM phase and how did I sleep. And only if I know for certain, if I look at my watch, I know whether I really slept well. So of course, gamifying everything, and I mean gamification and the gamification of sport health games also is part of quantification. And the problem with quantification is, of course, that you tend to think that it doesn't exist if you don't see it in numbers. Yeah, but this has always been the case. I know these people. When I started going to the gym, there were always these people running around with little books and noting everything. And I mean, now it's an app. So in general, I would say that documenting your accomplishments and sort of getting points and motivating you is in general it's a good thing. If we can make this more addictive and more fun, that's also a good development. But I know, for example, a friend of mine who is currently experiencing psychological issues, trouble. Someone died in the family, and now he stopped wearing his Fitbit watch because he says, I don't want to sort of see how bad I sleep and the nightmares and everything. And now I see it all. So I guess like with every technology, there's the problem with in certain times, in certain periods, it's not good to use them. And not everybody has this sovereignty to say, okay, now is a good time to document and gamify my life, and now I just need to stop, because maybe if you're fitness-wise, if you're on a downward slope and you're not getting the gems and you're not getting the points, and it's like you're already feeling bad, and now you're also not getting what you usually get. This could sort of be like a downward spiral, which you want to avoid. So if you were a game designer, you could think about like detection mechanisms to sort of ask things like, are you sure that you still want to continue?
So I guess some of the challenges there is that generally with the quantification, health and well-being, we measure the good as much as we also measure the bad. What I'd like to know now is, Melis, in terms of, you work with a lot of companies, you work with employees,
right.
It's so important for employees to be healthy and present and in work. Is there must be an emphasis from the companies you're working with to make sure people are as healthy as they can be? So you want people to be addicted to that behavior and culture change. Could it be pushed too far? And how do you know that what you're encouraging people to do is the right kind of healthy for them?
I'll be very honest here, because like I think it's that kind of a panel here, and unfortunately we're going to agree with Oliver everything about, and that's the worst possible scenario for a panel, right? You don't want people to agree, you actually want to have a discussion there, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. Like I really think that it's paramount to have people addicted to these health games if like if the other alternative are the the worst habits out there. So yes, like I'm all for like addictive games, but again, as Oliver said, and as you also mentioned, you have to go back and look at the impact that this like stickiness is having. And we're calling the stickiness. It's at the company that I founded, and ours is a very sticky product because of the gamification aspect in it. Like people can win points through challenges, through the competitions they win, through badges, like 10,000 steps, then you have the like Walker badge, and like 20,000 steps you have the next badge, etc. And like since it's a very close community, as you said, Ben, like this is happening within a company, so people are affiliated to each other. They're not just like it's not like Fitbit where like you're competing against people you don't really know. This is like a close community. People know each other. They want to like show off to each other. So like when that's happening, it's very addictive, like it's very, very sticky, our product. And HR, of course, like coming back to your question, HR loves that. But I think there's a responsibility in our hands, like as with all technologies and all theories out there, right? Like I'm sure everybody here watched the Netflix Social Dilemma, where like BJ Fogg is like being like, killed basically throughout the entire like hour and a half. And like coming back to that idea, I think the responsibility falls into our hands when we're using these technologies, these like gamification aspects within our products. We need to go back and see what kind of an impact this has. And here's what we've done. In like every day, we're asking people how they've slept and how they're feeling. And we're checking how the stickiness in certain parts of the app is affecting their mood and sleep. Then we can go back and say, yes, Ben, like actually like your people are really, glued to this product. They love it, but they don't just love it. They're actually like making themselves better through it. So once, as a, producer of a product, if you have like those two focuses on mind, I think you can, and I think this is the way we should be looking at our products with both sides. And we're doing the same thing. We're measuring sentiment, not only through people's like, button clicks, but we're also looking at sentiment analysis through AI to check if like the interventions we're doing in the app is actually like bringing their moods up or down. So
there's two yeses in that case. Victoria, I mean, are the current spend for the global domestic product on health, it's around 10 to 11% of GDP every single year. Can we afford not to make it hyper addictive?
Well, I probably will add some point against it. So some discussion as Melis wanted. Yes, but first I will confirm what you both said, Oliver and Melis. And actually, it's something what was on the last show of Oprah Winfrey of her show, Daily Show. She said that every person who came, be it famous or not famous, a regular person, they wanted to be qualified. Every one of them. She said there was not a single person who didn't ask her, was I good enough? Was it good enough what I said? And this is again, it's our natural wish to be validated. And those apps, those games, and that is why I give myself points. Even a gratitude journal, somebody liked this idea. I actually started writing how many days since I started doing it. So today was 122. This counter is something that helps us. So we want to be qualified. But what I see about addiction, I think that when we get addicted to something and cannot leave it or think we cannot leave it, I think one of the reasons is that we give the responsibility of our success to that product, not to ourselves, but actually we are responsible for our well-being. And I think one of another reasons, I think why some products lose customers, and I recently talked to somebody who is doing also something like that. It's not a Fitbit, but it's another tool on counting steps and so on, but also and the apps. They started losing users, and I think this is just a natural thing of voluntary participation. What also Jane McGonigal said. Even there've been an experiment. Somebody tried to play a game 24/7, but at some point he left. That's it. So you come and go. You don't play one game 24/7. So I think that people will, even if they like a game, they might leave it. Like your friend Oliver, he didn't feel like playing this Fitbit game now, and it's okay. He had another game, a well-being game, and maybe in that situation that he had, in the context of his emotions. And I've been asked during the courses that I do on turning life into fun games quite often, say, I am afraid to be ambitious when I do something like that. When I turn my life into fun games, that I start like hunting the points and so on. Then I said, then you actually forget to play another game, relaxing game. Don't treat yourself, don't try to reward yourself with a break or buying something or like a coffee break. But this is another game. Reward yourself for playing those games. So this is what I'm trying to say. And don't, another thing is I don't take the points that I do seriously. So if I forget that's okay. Sometimes, yes, it's also a point, So this is why I'm so eager to say, be aware what you're doing. You already play games, so whatever you use, Fitbit, another, whatever it is a game gadget, and it's your decision how you play it. So you play on one game and then another. So this is a little bit, maybe goes away from the topic you asked, but
no,
I think it's important.
I think it's completely right. So building on that, I mean, and one of the big challenges and a lot of conversations I have in the UK at the health system is that we have a society that is dependent on healthcare professionals. And actually around 1 in 5 to 2 in 5 primary care appointments, whether it's a GP or a physio, don't necessarily need a medical intervention, but because they're dependent on the system, they go to the system to find a way to alleviate their illness. By creating addictive games, for addictive health games, are we removing people's locus of internal control to manage their own health? I mean, back to the employees you work with, do you think there's a situation where if suddenly they left the organization that's connected to you, that they work for someone else where they do not have this support, that they'd actually maybe would reduce their health because they've been dependent on these patterns because of the service that you provide? And as a result, could that be a bad scenario?
Yeah. Okay. I know where you're headed with this, so I'll come back to it with this. So I do a lot of organizational behavior change. Like that's like what we're focused on. And oftentimes we see when you're looking at an individual on the individual basis, Ben, and you want to change someone, that person's not changing. But then if you combine it with, the mexo, the meso, like all of the circles around that individual, like with the organization itself, like with the line managers, with, board members, with like colleagues, like if they want to, like if you intervene at those levels as well, and not just the individual level, the change happens much faster and in a more sustainable way. So if you take out this one person who has been nurtured in a well-being prone culture with all these well-being support systems, if you take that person out and put that person into a new ecosystem, will that person change? I think so. Like, I think, to be honest with you, like, how do behavior change? Like, there are three reasons how, like, there are 3 ways how behaviors change, right? Like, there's the aha moment, like COVID, right? Like, COVID happened and we all started cooking. Why? Because like all of the, like, I'm talking about all the way in the beginning, it's just like happened like that because of the environment change, right? Like it's, we had like a eye-opening, or like, why is everybody leaving their work right now? Because we all had that aha moment, right? The second reason, the second way of change is through environmental change. Like if you put someone in a new environment, like if you put me in a village today, I'm probably not going to be on this call, but like I would probably be eating organic even if I wanted to, or if I didn't want to. Habits built with, the ecosystem that you're put in. And the third one is, of course, like behaviors, and like we as like we operating within the gamification system, I think, are using the third one most. But like in your question, if you put this person somewhere else, yes, I think their health behaviors are going to change because they're not just going to be as supported as they were in the first scenario that they were put in.
I mean, similar question to you, Oliver. I mean, do you think there is a risk that we are removing people's innate motivation for self-care by creating health gamification?
Yeah, that's an almost philosophical question, and I mean it's more or less the same question you asked Melis. So, do we, by providing gamification, do we remove our intrinsic motivation? And I mean, this is one of the oldest things everybody is addicting, is accusing gamification of, by offering these quantifications, these points, these badges, all the things we work with, you're removing internal motivation. I want to give you an example from my own background. When I do teaching, I use gamification for my students, and I'll make little quizzes, and they can get points and badges and everything. And I really see that they enjoy the lectures more, and that especially the students on, I would say, the lower third of the performance spectrum, they really get kicked by this. Because with the top 10%, you never have problems. They will do their thing because they have this intrinsic motivation. So they've been overachievers always, and they will be this way. So the question is, how do we get the normal people into the system? And I've seen that for them, gamification is a cool gadget. So it's not this philosophical question like, wouldn't it be nicer if they would be intrinsically motivated? Yes, it would be. In a perfect world, everybody would be intrinsically motivated to do sports, to keep a healthy diet, to do all these things. But we're not living, as we definitely learned in the last few weeks, we're not living in an ideal world. Not everybody is living up to his or her personal potentials, and gamification is just a way to help them to make things better. So I'm completely pro gamification in that way. Say, okay, especially people who are struggling, for them gamification can be like something to lean on. It helps me. Oh shit, just 8,000 steps and I want to have 10,000, and I see it on my watch and it reminds me. And when I maybe do this do another walk or something, and if I don't get this motivation, if I don't get this nudge, I'm just not doing it. I'm just sitting on the couch like I like doing. So I think.
Is that the point then? Biologically, we are programmed to conserve energy, to be sedentary. We are programmed to seek out high energy food wherever it's possible to find. Unfortunately, we now live in an environment in the modern age that doesn't match that, because that we are sat down so often, and it's so easy to use your app or go to a corner shop to get fast food or chocolate. And so, because we are biologically programmed to be that way, we are fighting it all the time. Are we just giving people a helping hand to find that motivation?
That's how I would see it. Yeah, we're helping people to make the best out of their potentials. Yeah, in an environment which is trying to make everything so easy. Yeah.
And in that case, is this a redundant question around the ethics of health gamification? Should we even be debating it? Is it thus we need to maximize it? We need to make it as addictive as possible, rather than having these conversations, which I have with many other academics and designers and owners and entrepreneurs of health gamification companies. And the idea of ethics comes up at some point. And are we just talking about it because we think we need to be good human beings and considering the ethics of it, because we do in all aspects of our life? But actually, should we just throw caution to the wind and just go as hard as we can to create solutions that embed better behaviors in people?
Can I say something?
Go for it, Victoria.
Actually, I think the addictive and many apps, many methods actually try to make people addicted to that, or try to convince them this is the best, this is do that and you will solve your problems. But I think making addictiveness a goal is and I'm using my own thing that I said that not so good to use to agents, saying it's not a good one. So I'm labeling, I'm sorry. So I'm thinking to put a goal to addiction is not the right way to go. What is the right way to go is to empower people and provide tools, and they then and to empower them to make their choices, to make the tool, to choose the tools that they want, and also to put away the tools if they need so. And really, thank you, Oliver, for the example of your friend, that when sometimes you need to put those things away. Sometimes I forget that I turn my life into games. while I'm still doing. I don't think, when I go to bed, I just check my time, and that's it, and that's I fall asleep, and that's it. So I don't think about. And this is what happens to children when they play. When I recollected how I was when I was a small child, I maybe sometimes someone asked me what I'm doing. I said I'm playing, but I never thought of it as playing. I never defined it. I was just doing what I was doing. I was in the flow. And this is what is important to empower people to be present where they are, to feel in their fullness, whatever they're doing. Either they're taking a nap or go and exercise. And I'm inspired here in Denmark very much. They have this term, and it's became actually English term already. It's called hygge. And hygge, you maybe heard about it. It's one-to-one translation, something like coziness, but it's not exactly that. You can see two people going to jog, to exercise together, and then at the end of the jog they say it was hyggelig, it was beautiful, it was cozy. But you never would think, maybe in other languages, as exercising or sweating as cozy. But this is what they do. This is this feeling. My mom, we are not Danish, so I'm a German citizen with Moldovan origin, and my mom lives also in Denmark. And she once asked me, what is hygge? And I was thinking of an example, and I said, do you remember the times when you visited and we had an exciting time, and you said, wow, that was nice. And I said, this is hygge. And this is what we want to achieve, that people have fun, that they are empowered to come back to that activity. And I noticed with myself, I did the push-ups for 100 days. And then I'm thinking, I can do that already. And this is what also Ralph Costa says in his theory of fun for game design. He says, the destiny of game is not to be fun, but to become boring. This is what we need to achieve. We need to make, to make the games that they are boring, but also another game, maybe another level or another dimension to that game that they become excited. Because if they learned everything that they want to or need to do, then the game becomes boring. So this is the goal, and the fun is the process. Also, he says it. So this is, I think, our goal should be when we create something, to empower people, to that they can have the energy to, for the choice, and that they feel empowered.
That almost reminds me of the self-determination theory, Victoria. We've been discussing this with my team for so long. Instead of telling people what to do, just here's a program, just go and do that and win points. You need to give people space and the freedom to choose, the autonomy to choose that, and give relatedness in the app as well. So I think it all comes back to that as well. And coming back to what Oliver said very quickly, I also agree with you that and I always talk to my corporate clients about this, it's almost like a change funnel, right? At the end of the bottom, you're going to have those people who are really excited about change, right? They're just okay, let's start doing this. But then at the top, there are those people who are not even aware of the problem that exists. They don't even know they have the problem. So I think gamification is this super cool tool for us to draw people into this awareness game, so to say, and hopefully get, as Victoria said, and I'm sorry again, but there's again uncommon understanding, but get people to that level where they can say, yes, I am motivated, I understood my problem, now I'm aware of it, now I'm ready to take action, now I'm playing the game, I'm in it, and then hopefully by then it becomes such a routine that you don't have to track it with a phone or something,
What I'm wondering then is one of the points that Victoria raised about the idea that it should become boring. And if you think about, is there a framework here? If you think of a charity organization, ultimately the charity's core purpose is to no longer need to exist. If they can deliver upon their problem and solve it, they don't exist. That's their core purpose, to no longer be existing. Should an ethical rule of health gamifications is to become obsolete, should that be rule one of any health gamification product? To become so boring that either they move on to a new solution or that they solve the problem to become obsolete as a solution at all? Anyone from the panel, any thoughts on that?
Maybe I can
Oliver first.
add something, because I've been doing a lot of work on exergames and published some papers on rehabilitation. The problem is that if you have to do rehabilitation, for example, if you ever did it, if you have a problem with your elbow, you need to do exactly that movement, like for 20 minutes. And it has to be exactly that movement and not faster and not slower. And it's extremely boring and tedious. And actually, it's like that in many exercises. Rehabilitation is even worse, because normally in the gym, it's about, so if you can do your push-ups quicker, it's good, or if you can do more. But with rehabilitation, it's exactly that. It has to be exactly that. Not slower, not faster, not more repetitions. And I think something like this is always, it will be inherently so boring that every kind of gamification makes it easier, because we know from research that people never regain their full functionality in rehabilitation, and it's not because they can't, it's because they don't want to do the exercises because they are so boring. So in this case, gamification really helps to sort of get people to do something. And I think maybe charity is not the right comparison, because I mean, something like Ebola, you can win, but with your own body, with health, it's a permanent struggle, and we're all gonna lose at some point. So even if I say I'm quite fit for a 45, 48-year-old with the same fitness, if I would like to be as fit as I am today in 10 years, I would have to struggle quite a lot, because testosterone levels are going down, muscle is going down. So it's a downward slope. And I think that making gamification obsolete in health would be very difficult. It's more like it needs to get better, because we have to struggle more. Because if you're 25, I don't think that you need that kind of gamification. For example, if you're at the gym, because you see the permanent improvement. Everything is getting better all the time. And if you're older, or if you had a stroke, or if you have to do rehabilitation, it needs much more energy from the outside. And I think this is what gamification can provide.
I agree completely. And gamification, or whatever approach it is, it's not a one-time pill. It's usually should be applied as a lifestyle, and it will never become obsolete. And I would not only look at the gamification, but also games. And there have been studies showing that, for example, patients with Alzheimer, they feel much better if they play games, or if they do some kind of research studies or projects, and suddenly they remember something from the past that ignites them, even if they forget shortly after. But I think there is a quote by Andrzej Maciejewski, who writes a lot about gamification, and recently in his blog post he said that he always, when he teaches gamification, he says that gamification is about learning from games. And I think that's brilliant. And this is what we need to do. And that is why gamification will never die, and why it existed since, ancient times. We just didn't call it that way. But all this gamefulness and playfulness was present, in every moment. And we do it intuitively. If, for example, a child is grieving, lost someone, and I know it from my experience when I was a child, like many relatives, like from cancer or whatever. So actually you see an adult saying, yeah, play a game, do something. So, that's, or maybe do something playful, even those like gamifying eating for the babies or whatever, those things existed all the time. We just try to name them and try to use them consciously. So this is what gamification is. And I think we need to continue creating the tools. Even if I use paper, I really urge creating apps and those systems that have been shown today really there, about rehabilitation today. Lucia has been shown, and it's really, really important because these are tools that we need, like Oliver said, to make them fun. And today was one more thing quickly. It was quoted, the super beta was quoted today. And this is what Jane McGonigal said when she turned her concussion into fun games. She didn't change her condition. It was exactly the same. It was the hardest year of her life. But what happened, she stopped suffering. And this is the thing. When you turn something into games, or when you offer the tools for someone to turn into games, like Oliver said, this movement, then if they do it for 20 minutes without any game, they will be suffering. But if they do it like shooting at something, for example, a tumor or whatever, they will suddenly see a purpose in it, and they will stop suffering. It will still be hurting and will have muscle ache or whatever, but they will come excited after that. So that was fun. So this is the purpose, and I think it will never die and be obsolete.
And I'll dive in right there because Ben mentioned social entrepreneurship. Like I'm also the founder of a social entrepreneur social enterprise called Women on the Field. We basically get over 500 girls across Turkey to play soccer every day. Why is that critical? Because every day when you turn on the TV in Turkey, you see men playing soccer. You don't see girls or like women playing soccer. And we say that every day, Ben. Like we say, like one day when you open the door and when you say as many girls playing soccer as the boys do, then you know we've established and accomplished our goal. Then we don't need all of those gamification that was put into Girls on the Field, our like social enterprise. Like we made it so fun for girls to be on the field to play that game that like they're coming in flux. It even became like a super trendy thing to do in Turkey for girls. It wasn't like that 10 years ago. And my little one that you guys just saw, my 5.5-year-old, she's like, Mom, do boys play soccer as well? Or is it just girls? You know, it's like, so you know, you're getting somewhere with that. And like, I think that to answer your question, and I think we disagree there, Oliver and Victoria. I'm excited about that. So like, I think like, yes, like people should be so healthy that we shouldn't need the gamification to lure them into this process, you know? It's like, and coming back to the super better example, like, do you think, Victoria, that like Jane continues to play that game after her like critical condition went away? I'm sure like she spends more of her time in like other games, probably not that one, you know, like, or like back to Oliver's point, you know, like when you're in that critical condition where you can't move the elbow, okay, when you start doing it, it's to some working level, then you're just like, whatever, the rest is boring. So maybe like, I think, yes, like the point should be to make gamification so obsolete so that it can become an innate thing. Coming back to Oliver's point.
I agree that Jane McGonigal probably doesn't play anymore, and I never played Super Beta, I must admit. But what I think is that we need to have different games, not just one solution. So, but different and educate. And yesterday somebody said about literacy at the panel yesterday. I asked about bringing the design into schools, and I think game literacy is really important. So people have the empowerment into that. But I agree that only Super Beta or only one framework will not help. And actually I see many reactions to Super Beta when I mention it to people who know it. They either say it's great or the other say that's nonsense. But the thing is that they are looking at the result, and they are either accept or don't like the framework, but they are not looking at the process. And I think this is what gamification is about, that it is the process of learning from games. And this is what I don't think will come obsolete. So I'm arguing now.
So I think still okay. So we've had a little bit of disagreement, but I think overall we kind of all agree with the concept of health gamification for the purpose of the greater good to create societies that are more helpful. The argument is maybe we should abolish it if we ever solve health, but the reality is that's probably never going to happen. So we need some level of health gamification. I was at a workshop yesterday, and we were presented with a challenge of diabetes. And one thing is around physical activity, diabetes, it works, it makes a difference. So we were giving a few different scenarios of some example patients, people living with these conditions. And one of the scenario was an individual who kind of had diabetes for 10, 20 years, had all these complex needs, was still in work. But one of the things he did was he enjoyed going betting. He went to bet on the horses. So he came around to me to give an idea, and I said, well, just giving free bets if he goes for a walk. And I had people audibly gasp and look at me because the view was that we should be encouraging betting. So if we're trying to create incredibly addictive, healthy games, is there no rules? Is it that actually we can get people to give them free tokens to go betting, whether that's on soccer or football or bingo? Because ultimately, if our end goal is health, the other potential negative consequences of that process are irrelevant. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that. And again, what I'm trying to bring back to is that, do we need guidelines? Do we need a framework for health gamification? Or is it just go for it and be as addictive as you humanly can? Oliver, I'll bring you in for that one first of all.
Oh, God.
To create health behaviors?
I think betting is just a borderline, in my opinion. I mean, if you would, maybe he enjoys violence against kids, and then we would say, okay, letting him beat kids is probably not a good thing. So where do we draw the line? I think you need to draw the line when others are hurt, or yourself are getting hurt. So if this person, for example, is addicted to betting, and we would give them sort of additional candy to feed that unhealthy behavior, it's probably not the right way, because we always, as Melis said, it's about empowerment, and this way we would just use a weakness and we would exploit that weakness. We wouldn't make that person stronger, but we would exploit the weakness. It's like if you offer an addict heroin, he will probably do a lot of things he would otherwise never do to get that. So not the right way. I think you always need to check, are we supporting people, are we empowering them? Because making people move and go to the gym, these are all healthy things. Making them bet is problematic. But actually, I mean, all the things we are doing can somehow be quantified, and what gamification does is just visualize them more strongly. For example, in sales, you always had this like gamification things, like who sold the most in the last quarter or whatever, and then you have these leaderboards and everything, and here we exchange money for a lifetime. I think that is already some kind of gamification. But it's already not quite healthy, in my opinion, because many people are sort of only seeing the money and not seeing that their job in itself should create some use or make some kind of sense. So this to me seems already slightly unhealthy. So I think if in comparison to giving people money to make them do things, we give them fun to do certain healthy things, it's okay. So I think here I would draw the line, because there is already an established system of making people do things they don't really like to do, which is giving them money for that. And I think whatever you can pay a person to do for in a legal system, you could also sort of gamify that. Yeah.
Victoria, any thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. I think kindness is the line. So, and it should go on different dimensions. So if you give him the possibility to go and betting, on some dimension, you are not kind to him because this might damage him. But you can use his betting passion in some different ways. Maybe create something, a system, a game, or whatever, where he can bet, but on health. And I have an example here. And is it okay to name a system or a game that I know? I heard of it.
Of course, Victoria.
I think it's called Healthy Wager, and this is what people actually do. They bet for themselves or on their health. So it's especially for those people who want to lose weight or to reach the weight that they want to be healthy, and so they pay monthly the membership for a gym. So this is what they pay there. And then they say they make a wager on themselves, saying in half a year I will lose so much weight. And this is a community of people. So what they do like challenges together. They organize. They also wear Fitbit and so on. So they do all those things. Use different apps. They engage each other. And a friend of mine has done it, and she lost, and she was really excited. She was blogging about it, but she was also nervous whether she will lose the weight and she had to document it and with the weight and so on. And she actually managed to lose as much weight, and then she got actually over the 100%, I think a little bit more than she invested. So she won. If you didn't lose the weight that you waged on, then you lost it. So it is betting. But it is betting on your health, and it's motivating you. It's bringing socializing. And they also say that they use consciously gamification here, and they use also the gambling, but in a different way. So this is what I say, that to take the passion of that person, and if it's not kind in the way he uses or she uses it now, but change it in such a way that it becomes kind.
I love this, by the way. What a great example. I will definitely look into that. And maybe coming back to your question, Ben, very quickly. I mentioned this all the way in the beginning, like we were measuring our stickiness all the time, and we stopped doing that. We were just like, what is this stickiness helping to, like, what is this changing? What's the impact? And I think as game designers, like we have to always have that in mind, like as a filter, you know, like what's being achieved here. And that's like one of the major things that we need to be doing. Like there needs to be a line, definitely. And coming back to your point on like, I mean, obviously, like in order for something to become a habit, like you need to have some sort of motivation. It needs to be doable, and there needs to be a trigger. Like it's like the standard now. And what you're talking about is motivation on. You're talking about motivation here, and like, you know, making that motivation higher by using something that this person is really addicted to. And coming back to our example, what we do daily is like when we're planning some motivation boosters, we always try to do it as internal gifts or internal like motivational boosters, and never as external motivation boosters. And that's what we always keep in mind, because that almost always affects the sustainability of the impact of the stickiness as well. Because like if after some time you stop giving that external reward, people stop coming back to the game, and that's something that you definitely don't want to do, in both ways.
So I completely agree. And taking it back to the example I gave, so the scenario was that this person wasn't necessarily addicted to gambling, to betting. He just did. He bet now and again. There was no indication that he was addicted, but there is the risk, admittedly, that someone could become addicted. But generally, about 1% of the population gets to a point of gambling addiction. Is the line there? Can we accept a utilitarian approach that we go, well, the majority of people may see this as a motivational element. There is some risk that some could become addictive, but we're happy with that's where we're drawing the line, because ultimately the kindness we want to offer people is better health and well-being. Or is it that we have to rule out the idea of gambling at all? Because I gamble on two things ever. One is the Grand National that happens once a year. Two is the World Cup, which happens every 4 years, and that's it. But if I was giving that as a reward, I'd use it for that. But I'd probably find it motivation, because I know that could become at least a fun bet, or who knows, £100 if I got the right horse. So should we remove anything we perceive that could be dangerous or addictive when actually the majority of people are unlikely to have that addiction?
May I say? Oh, okay.
Oliver, do you go first?
Yeah, I was once got a psychological review, which where I was called a person with an high affinity towards addiction, and you can measure that, and I'm quite sure that this is for me this is a correct statement. So I was always sort of interested, but you can become addicted to so many things. There are people who are addicted to sex, people who are addicted to sports, people who are addicted to betting, shopping, games, computer games. We know all that. So I think that somehow this seems to be like maybe even a genetic disposition, which you are more or less born with, and sort of you search for your kind of addiction, the things which press the buttons. And I think that gamifying things and games are a comparatively harmless addiction. So if you have a personality which is prone to becoming addicted, games, especially games for health, would definitely be the kind of addiction I'd prefer to gambling or for money or drugs or something. So maybe it also has a social element to it. Taking this proneness towards addiction and helping the people to sort of integrate it into their lifestyle in a more healthy way.
So in that case, are we creating, if we had to find some sort of framework or guidelines for the ethics and morality of health gamification, is it we follow Google to begin with, that we start at do no harm? But ultimately, are there smarter ways we can do this? Should we be understanding people's addiction levels when they start taking part in a health gamification service? Should we be looking at potentially some of the risks they exhibit to things like if we give them certain rewards, they could be addicted to that? Is that the responsibility of health gamification companies, or are we creating unnecessary red tape and bureaucratic processes?
I think that I think you touched a very important point here. It's about awareness, and I think it's about the choice. And you said something that some people, or most people, are not addicted, and so we do have a responsibility. But I think we do also have responsibility on bringing awareness. And I like these serious games about bringing awareness. And today was talk about the teaching psychological, skills and about yourself and so on, for those who suffer with depression and so on and anxiety. And I think this is what's important, that gamification or game designers continue creating those things, awareness, maybe making aware of the addiction and giving the choice, different choices, and then the person could choose, of course, what they want to do. But it's a very, very tricky question. So I really like that you raised it, because if we try to manipulate with gamification a person to do a decision, not to make mistake or to be, what we think kind to themselves, don't bet, don't buy a lotto. But actually buying a lotto in Germany, for example, that's one of the, sometimes it's gifts you give as a gift, for example, for the lottery and so on. And there are also lotteries for helping. It's like the people with special needs and so on. And it's there is Action Child, I think, Aktion Child or something in Germany, where they do this. So it's a lottery, but you help also people. So there are programs. So it's a kind of gambling, you could say. But there are different programs. So we need to leave the freedom to people to make their choice. But I don't know if I would actually go so far as, asking, if they like baiting, maybe just offering a possibility of a gift, of a reward, and they would then choose what to do with it. I don't know, but it's a fine line, and defining kindness, it's also maybe relative for each person.
I'll come to you in a moment, Melis, but it's just ultimately through health gamification, we are employing tactics of the manipulation of a behavior. And so no matter what it is, our end goal is to create that behavior. And so we are going to manipulate people. That's kind of what we're doing in the process is, do we need an ethical framework to make sure we're guiding that process? So that the line is kindness, but just saying kindness is not enough, because that can be interpreted however you want. Melis, do you want to come in just at some points there, and I'll hand it over to all three of you to come in for the last 30 seconds.
You literally drowned me in thoughts. Like, I've been like thinking, like, because it's a very philosophical question, and it just brought me back to how much responsibility we have. Like, there needs to be so much thinking going into this, like even the thing, like, because like when you think of it, like, yes, we never put any betting like gifts on our platform because we're not catering to a German population, Victoria. That's why. so like we don't do that, but like we do other things, and like other things can be very addictive. Like people are addicted to shopping, as I just like gave an example to. And yeah, like should we be double thinking about like if we're putting like I don't know some like famous shoe brands like shoe discounts on our app? Yes. Like that brought me to that, and thank you so much for that realization. You just made me aware of something that I wasn't aware of. And there's not. It simply should be very clear about like we should be thinking. There should be so much thinking going into that. Coming back to that point, I'm so sorry. Like I have nothing else to say, just notes to take for further looking into my product. To be honest with you,
that's no problem at all. In that case, in the last minute and a half that we have, I just want to go around to you each for 30 seconds, and I want you to summarize if there were some guidelines or a framework for the ethics and morality of health gamification. What are some of the things we should be thinking about or considering? Victoria, I'm going to come to you first.
Yes, I think that we need to engage people into designing things for themselves and using what we create in their frameworks, in their own private personal frameworks, and actually urge them to adjust the design. So to do as they wish to. So really this game literacy is so important, I think, because games actually came from real life and did in something magical with real life, into some systems that are just engaging, exciting, and so on. So now it is time that we learn from them and go get circle of inspiration. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oliver, over to you.
Yeah. You remember the time when you just could buy cigarettes and nobody was telling you that you're going to die if you smoke them?
I was literally thinking about the same thing.
Yeah.
My line.
No, I just thought that we creating that awareness. If you smoke cigarettes, you're damaging your health. So you could also do something like, if you're using that app, you're partially exchanging your internal guidelines, replacing them at least for a time by external ones. This may damage the way you sleep. This may influence your internal motivation to go to the gym. Because you're only then now going to the gym if you get your points and badges. So I think if you sort of if you provide that meta level, you empower people to make the decision for themselves if they want to use gamification, or at least they know what they're doing, and maybe even a little bit about the mechanisms we are using. And I think in comparison to smoking, gamification doesn't do that much harm. So if we sort of provide this kind of disclaimer, in my opinion, it would be okay. It's like the informed consent we're doing at studies. We're saying, okay, this could be the worst thing which could happen to you in that study, and are you still okay? And when they give informed consent, and when we're doing it. And I think something similar could or should be done with gamification.
Melis, last final thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I was thinking like it's almost like in any relationship. So it's like 50-50, right? Like both sides have like an equal say in this relationship. And coming back to what Victoria and Oliver both said, like give people, of course, I keep back thinking about my own platform, but like give people transparency into what you've built, with which theories you've built them, and just give like transparently, openly about like what game you're going into. And I love the term game literacy. Yes, like give people that, and hopefully people will get into it and like do their 50%. And on the other 50% is your bit, obviously. Like be very responsible about what you are putting in there as motivational bits that we just discussed.
Yeah. No, thank you very much, Victoria, Melis, Oliver. It's been great to have you on the panel, and we've gone almost full circle from starting all championing each other, saying gamify everything and let's make sure everyone do as often as we can. Maybe we should have some guiding principles after all. Maybe
great job. Great job, Ben. Seriously.
In a direction. But thank you all very much for your time today, and it's been a great session.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Thank you
man.
so much.
Excellent.
It was excellent.
Melis,
You broke us
Victoria.
apart.
That was brilliant, everyone. What a fascinating discussion. I think the transparency of games we've talked about quite a lot in gamification, actually, in corporate terms over time, like because we're always talking about people volunteering to play them, otherwise they're not fun. So I think you're on the right track. But this mix, what have you got here? You've got putting a warning label on, some transparency, and also teaching them game literacy. These are like your outcomes, aren't they? I think
Yes.
fascinating.
Great summary.
Thank you so much, Ben, for leading this panel session. Thank you, everyone, for taking part.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if there's any questions from the audience. I don't mind running over for another couple of minutes.
There is one I see from
Is it this
Angela.
one?
Yes.
Go on, then.
Very
Who'd like
nice.
to take this one.
And I think that was completely related to Oliver's point about having a disclaimer. But then I'd argue, are we just absolving ourselves of responsibility of game designers just by putting a disclaimer on?
Everything.
Yeah.
So that's probably another panel discussion, like how, if we put the disclaimer on every single product then or not. So, yeah.
Don't put your cat in the microwave.
Yes. Yeah, there is this common sense things that is very relative. And it's again, what is common sense? Yeah. Thank you, Angela.
I guess my only point. Yeah, great question. My only final point on that one is like part of a game sometimes is being immersed in it. So if you've got all these warnings and things flagging up, does that impact quality of the game and then ruin how it's working?
Mm.
Yes. Okay.
Well, thank you again, panel. I can see from the chat that people really enjoyed that. And I thought it was a really fitting way to end a whole day of talks on gamification and health. We started the day with Maximilian basically giving us a structure for how to develop gamified health projects, and I think he showed us 6 different research case studies and took us on the journey to do that. Then we had a load of examples throughout the day, stories of how to gamify apps, and ending with a discussion on the fact that basically they are obviously really powerful, so we need to be careful with our powers. Thanks, everyone.